My friends, please remember, random acts of kindness every day, because we will overcome. We are America strong, and we are Rotarians.
From our studios in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, it's the Longwood Rotary Club, Home Edition, on Thursday, May 21st, 2020. Normally meeting at the beautiful, world-famous Longwood Botanical Gardens. Guests today are Dave Haradon, Lenny Rivera, George Gower, Jordan Gushurst, and our special guest, Rob Newman, former Senior Director for Regulatory Affairs from Johnson & Johnson Company. Please welcome our host for today's meeting, Longwood Rotary Club President, Bob Curran.
Hey, Longwood Rotarians. Here we are once again, Thursday, May 21st, for our Longwood Rotary Club online home edition meeting. We're going to get right to it. We got a great meeting coming up. We're going to get right to our thought of the day presenter, the other man behind the camera, Mr. Dave Haradon.
Welcome our host for today's meeting, Longwood Rotary Club President, Bob Curran.
Hey, welcome.
Oh, hi. I was just finishing up the video for this week's Longwood Rotary meeting online, home edition. Well, I just realized that I've got the thought of the day. Mr. President Curran just assigned that to me, so I guess I better come up with something. Let me just talk about Rotary for a minute, because I love the game of Rotary. I mean, there's no other organization that I know of than Rotary that's got this wonderful motto called service above self. Rotary gives us the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Rotary allows us to get into the world of possibility, to come up with all kinds of new ideas. I actually love the world of possibility. You get in the world of possibility when you say, geez, I wonder if I could do X. Just consider the possibility of making a difference in somebody else's life. And when you get into the world of possibility, it's amazing how you can just create new ideas, new actions, new results, and new impacts on people's lives. And that's kind of what we do in Rotary, isn't it? So the next time you're sitting around trying to generate an idea about how you can help somebody in our community, and Lord knows in these times there's lots of possibilities that exist out there, just ask yourself to consider the possibility of, geez, I wonder if. Then get in action, make it happen, so you can make a difference in somebody else's life. Then do it, and when you do it, be extraordinary. All right, I gotta get back to work here. Have a great day. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dave, for that extraordinary thought of the day. Next up is Jordan Gushurst, who is going to share with us part 2A of a two-part. The next one will be on June 4th. The Longwood Rotary Club's Transportation Resilience Program for Low-Income Families in Southern Chester County. Great project for the Longwood Rotary Club. Jordan, let's take it away.
Hello, everyone. This is Jordan back again with part 2 of our 3-part series on transportation of the Transportation Committee. And so today we are going to talk about some of the practical solutions that we can implement. Last week we talked about what we've learned so far. So today we're going to focus on practical solutions that we can implement. We have several areas of focus within cars, vehicles. In transportation, though, we think that there are high-value opportunities centered around education, repairs, maintenance, and vehicle acquisition. So I'm going to go through each of those. On the education side, one of the things we have found is that most people are not very good at shopping for cars. Even middle class, upper middle class, some people really enjoy it, but most people get intimidated by the whole process, the contracts, the shopping, the financing, etc. And so we think that there is a great opportunity to help people shop for a car, whether that means finding a car, working with the finances, what can they afford on the front end, what's a good deal on the back end. And we think that we can partner with some of the nonprofits in the area to offer as a service to them. We are able to help your people, your clients, do a better job of shopping for a car. They may have a car that used to work for them, now it doesn't work for them, et cetera. All kinds of different scenarios there we can do more of, and it's a very low cost thing where you can offer a lot of value to someone. One of the other things we've made some progress on is educating clients about car insurance. Mike Moyer has done a presentation to the Getting Ahead or Staying Ahead group about car insurance, and that was very well received. There are lots of opportunities to teach people about how to save money on car insurance. Another education opportunity is around end of life with a car and what are the kinds of work that is worth doing, what is the kind of work that is not worth doing on a car. We think that there's some opportunity there to really help people make good decisions about what they can do with their car. The next area of focus is repairs. So we have been working to create a trusted partner network. That's the term that we're using for businesses in the area that clients can turn to. There have been some shops that have taken advantage of people where they've charged them a fair amount of money and the repairs didn't work, or they just felt like they weren't getting good value for their money. And so we wanted to sort of deepen relationships with partners who we felt would do a good job, were ethical. This is not something we need to do in-house, we need to work with existing businesses. It also allowed us to negotiate a nonprofit rate for towing. Towing can be expensive, but the people who do it are not always busy. So we felt that we could lock in a lower rate and save people some money. One of the other things we did is we requested a grant from the Rotary Foundation for $1,000. And to keep our administrative costs low, we prepaid with several service providers. So Blitz Automotive, Roberts Towing, and Bavarian Motorsport. To date, have used Blitz Automotive to inspect a car that was being donated. We also purchased $25 Uber gift cards to be used by CACs to help people when they have a car repair, a car breakdown, etc. Jim Mercante, who several of you may have met from the YMCA and on other charitable work, he is leading that effort and we're learning through doing. We've also met with Technical College High School to understand what their capabilities are. Their job is to teach students, but they also have a body shop, which is able to do work for very modest prices. They are not able to charge for labor. They can only charge for materials and parts. And so for certain kinds of repairs, rust repairs or other things, body work, there are certain things that they can do for prices that really can't be beat. However, there is a slightly longer time to get that done. We've got some other ideas providing people with loaner/rental cars for when you have a longer term. Right now, if your car breaks down, it's something that you and I go to the shop, the car, if it's a longer than a one-day thing, the shop will give you a rental car and it's, no questions asked. Well, for other people, that's really prohibitively expensive. It could be 30, 40. So that's it.
Thank you, Jordan. And now we're on to our member spotlight of the week with Mr. George Gower.
Good morning, Rotarians. I'm George Gower, the spotlight for the week. I've been a member of this club for about 18 years, and I'm a past president of the club. One of the best years of my life. Really love this club. I've always marked my weeks by coming in on my Thursday meetings, and I really hope that we'll be able to meet in person one of these days soon again. I was born in Philadelphia and lived in Lower Merion for the first 5 years. After that, we moved to Berwyn, and I attended school there until I went away to college in 1979, where I went to Alfred University. It's a small university in Western New York State. There they have a specialty in ceramic engineering. Studied that. My father was a ceramic engineer, so I didn't pick it randomly. I knew I wanted to be an engineer and wasn't sure what kind, so ceramic seemed as good as any. Basically, ceramic engineering is high temperature chemistry, the chemistry of rocks, if you will. After that, I moved to, I lived in Westchester with my wife from 87 to 94. And at 94, we moved to Kennett Square, where we lived near the Unionville High School. I was married in 1987 to Leah. We've been married for 32 years. I have 2 children. Dan is 29. He's an engineer. He's married and lives in media. And my daughter Sarah is 27, and she's in home repair with her husband. Fiance, not husband yet. And they live in North Wilmington. Okay, I started working in 1984 for a company called Rox Industries, based in West Grove, Pennsylvania. Worked there until 1990. They were basically in the refractories business, which is where I've been pretty much all my life, but mostly in the materials side. Left in 1990 to join my father's company, and we started manufacturing in Avondale, Pennsylvania. Worked together until 1996 when we actually purchased Rox Industries and started consolidating our operations. Refractory Minerals is in the high temperature materials business. We do specialty powders or mineral powders that go into high temperature brick and mortars. These things are used to contain molten metal or in the petrochemical process where abrasion is a problem. My hobbies are skiing, mountain biking, bike polo, and sailing. Thank you for your time. Hope we all can see each other soon. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, George, for being in the spotlight today. Next up, we're going to introduce our guest, Sergeant at Arms, Lenny, the Cupcake Man Rivera.
Good morning, Longwood Rotarians. It's so nice to be seen. I want to just compliment Dave Haradon on a job well done with these videos. I think it's really great that we get to see each other virtually, and also to the other Sergeant of Arms for doing such a great job. Now, I was thinking about what was I going to say when I was Sergeant of Arms, and I'm thinking it seems like on the horizon we're going to be able to get back to doing what we love, right? And so I'm thinking, what are some of the things Longwood Rotarians are going to want to do once this quarantine is over? So I think I have a pretty good grasp on Longwood Rotarians, and I know that some of us are going to immediately want to go and hug our family members, and others are going to want to see our friends face to face. Some of us will want to go to church or go to the hair salon and get their nails done. That's probably Ronald Fentmacher. Or others are going to want to go to the office. Don't ask me why, but I'm probably one of them. And then, we have the usual people who are going to want to go to Minnesota or Las Vegas or the yarn store. Here's a funny one. Some of you might even want to go to the gym. Sometimes I crack myself up. But here at Longwood Rotary, what is the first thing that a majority of us are going to do? We're going to go to a restaurant. We're going to go to a bar. And so I put together what I would consider a public service announcement, all right, that if you do go to a restaurant and a bar when this quarantine is over, please be careful. Show the video, Dave.
Oh, hell.
How you doing?
Well, I'm great. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Okay. I'm not so good because you were weaving all over the road there.
Well, can
Sir?
we get one thing straight? I have not been
we
drinking.
need to, okay.
And
right hand to the nose.
yes.
With the left hand.
All right.
And back out. I need you to recite the alphabet from Z to A backwards as fast as you can.
From
Can you
Z
do
to
that
A?
for me? Yeah.
Sure.
Backwards.
Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A.
All right. Remarkable. I've actually never seen anybody do that.
Oh, my
Heel
bladder's
to toe.
full.
I'm not worried about your bladder right now.
Sure.
Okay.
10.
All right. All right. Well, you got pretty good balance.
Thank
there.
you.
I want you to step, bump, step, bump, bump, step, bump, step, bump, bump. 5, 6, 7, 8. Step, bump, step, bump, bump, step, bump, step, bump, bump. Pas de beret, kickball change, step, clap.
Okay.
5, 6, 7, 8.
You know what would be good is if you hitch kicked and then you kind of did that and then a barrel turn and then ha,
That was good.
That would be.
That was really good. You a dancer?
No, I'm just drunk.
Up against the vehicle right now, sir. You're going to jail.
Don't do what this guy did. He almost had it until the end. But if you do, remember, you call Lenny Rivera Law. We're there for all your legal emergencies. Thank you. Today, I have the privilege of introducing our speaker, who is our very own Rob Newman. Rob is been in the medical device industry for 35 years. He has led teams in engineering, regulatory affairs, clinical affairs, and quality. Most recently, Rob was the Senior Director for Regulatory Affairs at Johnson & Johnson Diabetes Care. Prior to that, he worked at several startups in the areas of in vitro fertilization, robotics, neuromodulation, and focused ultrasound surgery. Sounds pretty impressive. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. He also spent 17 years with General Electric Medical Systems developing clinical applications for magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs. Rob holds a bachelor's degree in biology from the U.S. Air Force Academy, Go Falcons. He earned a master's degree in clinical engineering from the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, Go Blue Jays, I believe, and he has an MBA from the University of Baltimore. I have no idea what their mascot is. Today, he will help us understand some of the terms we've been hearing in the news related to the science of medical research as they relate to the coronavirus. Rob, thank you very much for being here and all you do for our club. We look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, this is Rob Newman. How are you this morning? It's good to see you at Rotary. Sorry we're not here in person, but we're doing the next best thing. So there's never been a time when medical research has been in the daily news, and I just thought it might help for everyone to understand a little bit about the science behind all that. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm not going to try to turn you into doctors. I'm not going to channel my inner Fauci here or anything, but I just want to explain the process to you a little bit. So the first thing is really around medical research, it's really made in America. The US leads the world in drug and device development. About 45% of all medical devices are made here, most of the pharma. It's one of our largest export businesses, and there's high intellectual property work, lots of great high-paying jobs, and spin-offs of spin-offs. Living here in the Philadelphia area, you hear how much stuff is coming out of Hupp and CHOP and Thomas Jefferson and all these places. And the US really leads the world in this area. So the FDA is obviously the center of all this. And so what does the FDA really do? So they're really responsible for the safety and the quality of more than $1 trillion in our economy. 80% of all the food is FDA inspected. They do healthcare, obviously, and cosmetics. And FDA is also in charge of animal drugs and feeds. So they ensure the safety and effectiveness of all the medical products in the US. Their job, of course, is to protect us from harm, ensure that research is conducted with integrity and in an ethical manner. And FDA is really the global standard for scientific medical research worldwide. FDA writes the rule books, it's science-based, it's objective, and it's really what the whole world looks to. I've worked on a lot of projects where we would get approval in Europe, and we would go to a site and we'd say, we have CE, and they'd say, oh, that's nice. What does the FDA say? Because the FDA standards of research are really what the world looks to as how to make safe and effective products. So FDA oversees the development of really a very broad set of products, and I won't give you examples of every one of these, but obviously medical devices, we've got a bunch of people walking around here with artificial knees and hips, so you guys are familiar with that. In vitro diagnostics has been in the news every day. This is, where do we get my test for COVID, drugs, prescription, over-the-counter, biologics. So biologics is blood products like, I need a blood transfusion, but it's also vaccines and natural insulin for people who are diabetics. And then there's combination products. There's things that it's a combination of a drug and a device. The most the simplest one is like a home pregnancy test. There's the little dipstick, and then there's the biologic on there that actually does the test to see if you've got signs of being pregnant. So the FDA is really, they have responsibility for all of these things. So the framework for clinical research is really to provide a scientific basis for conducting the research in patients. So the most important part is to protect the patient's rights. So we want to make sure, the first is informed consent. So if you're in a procedure, if you're receiving a procedure that is not normal standard of care, the first thing is informed consent. Do you know what it is that they want to do? You know, it has to be a conversation in between you and the doctor, and do you really understand what you're doing? Because the goal here is you want to make sure that there's a fair balance in between benefit to the patient and risk of this non-standard procedure. The framework also establishes professional conducts. You know, how do doctors and hospitals ethically conduct their procedures? And lastly, to really create appropriate data for scientific conclusion. So one of the big ones is control bias. So when we want to study a new drug or a new device, there's a bunch of things we can do to make sure that, you know, we use it on a patient. Wow, we got this fantastic result. That's great. You run out and we win. But it only is on that one patient, you know. So we want to do things like you use blinding. So you make sure that there's for example, the simplest one is a placebo. So there's two drugs and there's two different pills. They look exactly the same, except they have two different numbers on the vials, and the patient gets vial number 314, and then the next patient comes in, gets vial 315, and then we follow the patient for 6 months and we look at how their blood pressure does. And it turns out that one of those is a placebo and one of them is not. So, but we're not going to know to the end of 6 months, and we follow this patient where we really see whose blood pressure gets better. And we do things like sample size. So we're not going to do this with one patient or 5 patients or 500 patients. We're going to do it on 1,000 patients, because we also have all of these things that are going on whenever clinical trials are happening where, you know, normal life comes along. You know, you have a baby, you get fired from your job, you gain 10 pounds, you get promoted and go on vacation and you're all relaxed. So we have to have appropriate controls, randomization, placebos. There's all kinds of techniques to control the bias in a study, so we don't just get one positive or one negative result and then try to make a conclusion about whether this drug or device is effective. So the phases of clinical research, the first thing is always bench science. So there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of mathematical modeling techniques, there's a lot of things that you can use on in vitro samples in the lab. There's different mechanical models of, you know, joints and screws and all that kind of stuff that we can do to find out if something might work. You know, is there a chance that this might work? And a lot of things, they're failures. You know, it just doesn't happen. So the next is we move on to, is there an animal model for this disease? And a lot of times, you know, I'm a cat guy, you know, there's cat people and dog people. There's not a lot of rat people. A lot of rats get trusted on this. But, you know, is there an animal research model that we can use to find out basic safety and proof of concept? There is a whole animal safety and ethics group that manages this. And a lot of efforts are made to limit the number of animals. Animals are very expensive, they're very complicated to manage, and you really, you know, we want to treat them humanely. However, they're not people. We want to use appropriate models to do this. The goal here isn't, hey, let's try it on grandma first. The next phase is we'll go into a basic safety study. So we find healthy volunteers who are paid for their time, and in a controlled environment, they'll be given this drug under very close observation. There's phase 1 centers, there's a lot of them around. There's several in Philadelphia that pharma companies use. and you're just going to use this on 5 to 10 people. You just want to see, does this drug have a negative effect on, whatever system, depends on the kind of drug you're using. And you really want to assess safety and side effects. You're not looking for efficacy. We're just looking for, does your body, is there any toxicity of this drug in the body? The next phase is basic efficacy. So how much is enough? So the drug's given to people who have just this disease. They have just hypertension. They have just, not enough red blood cells, whatever it is. You're going to test it on 200 to 2,000 patients under very tightly controlled conditions over a very defined period of time. And it's going to be in a limited group. We don't want anybody under 21. We don't want anybody over 65. We want, we're only going to sometimes something like asthma or allergies. There's parts of the country that have a lot of asthma and allergy. And so we're going to go to those areas. Asthma is only really a big problem in populations in the springtime. So we have to bound the study, and we do all kinds of things to manage that. And here we're really looking for what's the minimum dose that we can give to a patient where we see the positive effects. Is this controlling your asthma? And with the least number of side effects. It makes you sleepy, it gives you diarrhea, whatever it is. So once we pass through phase 2, then we're going to go to phase 3. And so phase 3 is the part where we start to get excited about things. But it's again, a tightly controlled study, but the drug is given to a population of people that it's likely to be prescribed. So much larger group, 2,000, sometimes some drug studies are up to 10,000 people. You're going to do it at multiple sites. A lot of times we do international studies. So we're going to have some sites in the US, we're going to have some in Canada, we're going to have some in Europe, because we want to look at multiple ethnicities, we want to look at different cultural groups, we want to look at, maybe we want to do it in North America, and we want to do it in South America at the same time, because we want to look at people in the winter and in the summer, if this is a seasonal disease. Then once we've got the data, we're going to do statistical analysis to look at the efficacy and the safety in all these subgroups. So was this drug more effective on young people? Was it on old people? Was it people who have diabetes and hypertension? Our asthma drug didn't work on them at all. We look at the patients where there were some adverse effects. Some people had nausea and headache when they took the drug, and it turns out that those people also have some other comorbidities, we call them, some other diseases at the same time that really interact with this. And so there are some subgroups where the safety of the drug is not positive for that small group. You get a good result, and the next step is to go to FDA for marketing approval. And the FDA review period for a drug is about a year, because you're going to submit 10 to 50,000 pages of documents to the FDA with all of your study results, all your statistical analysis, all this stuff. It's a very complicated, very long process. So the whole thing, for a successful drug, the whole process takes about 3 to 5 years. So it's a really long haul from, gee, hey, this looks like a great idea in a test tube, to really getting clinical results. It's a very long process. And then it doesn't end there, because phase 4 is post-market surveillance. So pharma companies, you monitor your patients, you watch journal articles where we have to go back every year and send a report back to FDA and say, we've been going to medical meetings, we're reading in the literature, and we see that patients with diabetes and asthma on our drug, don't do very well. So once the product is approved, the process continues. And once it's approved, no matter how it was studied, any doctor can prescribe it for any condition, and you go to CVS and you buy it. So when you're running these clinical studies in any of these, there's really four players in the process. There's the sponsor, so Merck or Johnson & Johnson, whoever it is. There's the investigator, and so these are the doctors that are at the hospitals that have patients that want to participate in the study. There's a very important group called the Investigational Review Board, I'll talk about in a minute. And then there's you, because it takes people to run these studies. And so probably some of you have been, when you've gone in to the doctor for something, your doctor said, hey, there's a new drug. We hear about this all the time in cancer studies, of course. There's a new study going on over at Fox Chase or at CHOP or someplace, and we would like to have you enroll in this study. So we all get the opportunity to do our part to help medical science as being a participant in a study. So the IRB, Investigational Review Board, is a very important group that's in the middle of all this. And so every big institution has one. And so it's a group of medical ethicists and clinicians that review this study. So J&J comes to Hop and says, we would like to do this study with you, and there's a doctor who's very interested. And so you go to the University of Pennsylvania IRB and present your protocol. And their job is to really look at this and say, is the risk to the patient reasonable? What do we know about this drug already? Is there any risk to the patients? Is there any risk to their families in participating in this? Are there protections around the privacy of medical data? We don't just, take data and spread it all over the world and let everybody know what's going on. So we have to provide privacy for the patient in their medical data. Is the investigator qualified? Is this doctor, if this is a cancer study, we're not going to let, the IRB isn't going to let somebody who's a diabetologist or a podiatrist participate in a cancer study. Is there informed consent? So does the sponsor come to them with a very specific script for the conversation in between the physician and the patient that explains what the study is, what the possible benefits for the patient are, what the risks for the patient, how many visits are you going to have to go through, what are we going to ask you to do, how many blood draws or MRI exams or whatever. So it's really a conversation in between you need to document that you've planned the conversation in between the patient and the doctor. And then, is the research well designed? Is it really good science and appropriate analysis, or is it just something that's kind of a throw it on the wall and see what sticks? So what can we do? What can you do? So the biggest thing is be an informed consumer around healthcare. There are no magic pills. Nothing is risk-free. In spite of what you saw on the infomercial last night on CNN, nothing is risk-free to you. Always think about the benefit versus risk to you. This drug works great if you happen to be 25 years old and healthy and normal blood pressure and don't have diabetes and no other problems. Maybe it doesn't work for you so well if you have some of these other things. So always look for information from informed sources. So don't just see something on Facebook and then promptly forward it to your friends and say, woo, we found it, the cure to diabetes. Just drink a cup of vinegar every day and your diabetes is going to be all better, or whatever it is. So wait, and also don't believe all the skeptics that are out there, that everything is bad for you. We all see every day in our normal going around, there's the miracle cure, or Big Pharma does not want you to know about this. If you just do the vinegar treatment for diabetes, you won't need all those fancy drugs. Or, send me $100 and I'll send you my secret cure. Or, the product liability people who are, you deserve compensation, just send me your name and we'll get you some money for that. So really it's never been easier to get information. The Merck Manual is now free. The merckmanuals.com/home edition is an immense, very user-friendly consumer version around medical care. Mayo Clinic has a great one, WebMD, clinicaltrials.gov. There's just tons of really good well-researched, credible scientific information out there for free. All you have to do is go read it. So let's talk a little bit about current events. So we've heard, unless you've been, totally locked down and had the TV turned off, which isn't a bad thing right now, but you've certainly heard a lot about emergency use authorization from FDA. And so there is a process, and it wasn't just invented recently, it's always been there, but FDA can declare there's a health emergency, and in a crisis, there's still a process, but FDA can suspend a lot of the formality. They can jump over a lot of those steps in a controlled manner to look at a broad range of alternatives. And this review often happens in days. Some things can happen in a day or two. So there's really been a large number of new diagnostic tests and treatments that have come to the US to help with this avalanche of patients that has come into the hospitals. Of course, there's been about 20 times this number of quackery and fakery that's come on Facebook and eBay and internet. I would really recommend talk to your doctor before you try some of these. I mean, most of them are just, it's something that somebody's brewing in their basement. It's just snake oil salesmen. They're preying on scared, uncertain people, and they're just trying to get your money. So after this emergency, normal rules will come back. So FDA will say, okay, crisis is over, we're back to normal rules. And these companies that have gotten these things through emergency use will have to go back, complete the normal clinical trial path to show they're safe and effective to stay on the market. There's really kind of four things that have been coming up in the news all the time here. So first is a diagnostic test, and we've heard about those, in ad nauseum on the news. So do you have this disease? Do you have the COVID virus? The next one is antibody tests. So serology, you've heard about serology tests. So a serology test is, have you developed antibodies to the specific disease? So yes, I had COVID-19 and now my body has fought it off and I have antibodies to the disease. So it means you've been exposed to it, your immune system reacted to a very specific pathogen. Of course, we know from what we're reading is it's not clear how strong these antibodies are or how long it gives you immunity, but it's possible, it's easy to measure these in the blood. So the next thing is there a therapy? So there's a lot of antiviral therapies that are being studied. It's kind of like what we have for HIV, right? For HIV, there are a lot of these antiviral cocktails where we can knock the virus down in your system. We can't knock it out, but we can push it down to a level where it's way below to detectability and way below where it's doing damage to your liver, your lungs, whatever it is. So these are easier to study than what we're going to talk about next, because what we're really doing is we're taking symptomatic people, we give them the therapy, and then we measure their viral load over time, over days. And we can really see, can we push down that viral load and can we get it down below where you have a symptomatic effect? And then the last is certainly been the star of the show, lots of talk about vaccines. So vaccination, exposes the body to an antigen similar to that of the target disease, and it primes your immune system to respond. So we all know, of course, because we're Rotarians, we all know about polio vaccine. And there's lots of vaccines for measles and mumps and chickenpox and everything else. So they all work the same way. Expose you to an antigen, your body reacts, and it gives you some period of immunity. The problem with developing a vaccine is, first of all, you have to develop an acceptable candidate. You have to find, I think we have a way to stop the COVID virus from attacking a cell and being effective in the body. So first we have to come up with the drug. Next, we have to vaccinate some volunteers and wait for the body to react and then measure the rise of antibodies. Do do antibodies, appear in the body. And it's really interesting right now. I was reading something on a vaccine trial. There is one, they have gone out to appeal for people who would like to participate. There are 16,000 volunteers as of yesterday morning. There were 16,000 volunteers who have raised their hand and say, I would like to be in a vaccine study. I believe that we're going to be able to do something here. So that's what you do, is you find volunteers, you vaccinate them, you wait for a reaction. And for those where you get a rise in the antibodies, you're going to follow this population to see, does it have a protective effect? So, okay, I can see some antibodies come up, but the people that have been vaccinated and the people that haven't been vaccinated both get COVID or polio or whatever it is at about the same rate. So my vaccine doesn't work. But lastly, because the goal here is, if we find a vaccine that works, we're going to want to vaccinate 10 million, 50 million, 326 million Americans with this. And so safety has to be a pretty high priority. You can't even, you have a 1% adverse event rate where, 99% of the people get, the appropriate immunity, but 1% of the people get sick or die. 1% of an immune reaction is a pretty big number. So I went in, there's a really interesting website. It's not private. Anybody can look at it, clinicaltrials.gov, that's out there. And so I went and looked at this yesterday, and that's a place, if you have anything, you have any disease, you have diplutus of the pluck, and you want to know, is there somebody doing a study on my disease somewhere, go to clinicaltrials.gov, go into find studies. It's a very simple drop-down box, and you'll find anybody in the world that's doing a study on this, any credible somebody, somebody in their basement or out in the jungle somewhere doing it, won't be registered, but any credible researcher lists their trials on clinicaltrials.gov. It's you can see it's National Institute of Health, U.S. National Library of Medicine. I went in there yesterday and typed in COVID. And just on COVID, right now, there are 1,368 studies registered on clinicaltrials.gov. And this is just the first page. I didn't do any cherry picking here. I just pulled up who's studying COVID. And here on the first page, out of 9 studies, here is United States, France, India, United States, Egypt, Iran, and Italy. And that's just page 1. There's, there's a lot more pages behind that. So there's, 136 pages behind this one. So it's really, there's just an army of people working on this. And yesterday afternoon, I was on a phone call. National Institute of Health is collaborating with a research group out of Emory. There are several universities working together. NIH has put out a call for anybody. It's kind of a, Shark Tank, inviting anybody in, anybody who's got an idea about improving testing, just around testing. They have assembled this group they have a whole bunch of researchers, samples, universities. And so if you're a researcher at Johns Hopkins or HUP or, any place, you have an idea about an improved diagnostic test, NIH has a 2-page form that you can fill out. They'll get back to you within 2 days. They have a review group. Within 2 days, they'll get back to you to say, we want to learn more about it. Then there's a longer application form, what are you doing? How do you know this works? What is the technology? And within 5 days, they'll say, you're in. And they'll invite you into the group. You get a cash award to fund your research. And the goal is they're looking for, you have to be a diagnostic device for COVID-19. You have to have some basic proof of efficacy. So it's not just, I got a great idea, but you have to be a little ways down the road on development. And there has to be the possibility that you can scale this up to do at least 1 million diagnostic tests by this fall. So this isn't just some, sitting around academic, stroke your beard and think big thoughts things. NIH is really driving the whole industry it's a call for anybody who has an idea. We'll review it in 2 days. We'll put you in the study in 5 if you got probability. We will fund you within 1 day. You can qualify for up to $1 million in research funding to drive this, but it has to be something that we can do at least 1 million diagnostic tests by this fall. That is just like breathtaking in what's going on and how this is changing the way the world is working. So there's a lot of really smart people out there trying to make something good happen. So just some closing thoughts. So the rate of technological change has never been faster. There's never been more, gene editing and metallurgy and artificial intelligence and all these kinds of tools that are going on that really provide the opportunity to develop some amazing new treatments. And along the way, they've developed some new challenges of their own. There's an army of researchers out there that are working on it and around the world, because the virus has really shown human biology, it's the same everywhere. No one is immune. This isn't an American or a Chinese or a French or an Italian disease. Every country in the world has COVID right now, and we need to find a way to corral it. And the true science of medicine doesn't have borders or politics. What I just showed, there's people in Iran, the US, China, every place is all working on the same thing. No matter how perfectly the research is conducted as we're doing this, it's always on a relatively small group of people. Even if it's 10,000, it's pretty small compared to what it's going to be exposed to. It's always in a well-controlled study. If you're in a study, you're coming back for regular visits, and we're measuring your blood pressure and your red blood cells and all this stuff. And it's always for a limited time. We can't study, and we can't do a drug and find out what's the 10-year effect of using this drug. Otherwise, we've got to wait 10 years before we know the answer. So there's always more that we learn once the drug or device gets out in a larger population. So if we learn something later, it isn't because somebody screwed up. It's because the 10-year effect of taking blood pressure medicine may be something that wasn't detectable in the 2 years that the study went on originally. And last is FDA or CDC recommended does not mean risk-free. Because something is because it's approved through FDA, that isn't a guarantee that it's risk-free. But it does mean there's been a lot of smart people who have looked at it pretty objectively. It's probably better a choice than something your brother-in-law recommended because he heard it from somebody when he was, at the feed store. And really, in the US, we're in the best place in the world where there's really very easy access to current, credible technical information and science-driven care. So it's a pretty scary time, but there's a lot of really good work going on to improve us, to help us out. So that's a very brief overview. I just want to ask you, be safe, take good care of your family and friends, and because we're Rotarians, be of service. Look forward to seeing you back at Longwood soon. Be well.
Thank you, Rob, for a great presentation. Very informative. Hey, next week, we are going to have a great presentation. We're going to live on the edge. We're actually going to go live Zoom, and our meeting will be Thursday, May 28th at 7:30 a.m. Now, that's a.m. for all you have been sleeping in for the past couple of months. So next Tuesday, we'll send you an online Zoom login information. I'm sure most of you have attended a Zoom meeting, and this will be no different. Everybody will initially be muted, and we will be sure to open the floor for questions and suggestions. Plus, the program for next week will be presentations from our outstanding students of the quarter from both Unionville High School and Kennett High School. So you don't want to miss that. Love to have you there live. Okay, don't forget your happy dollars. Get those envelopes full. Move into another envelope with more happy dollars. And then if that one gets full, go to your Happy Dollar trash bag and start filling that up with Happy Dollars. And we'll be spending a whole meeting counting all those Happy Dollars. So let's take it out with our four-way test and a very special one from the Longwood Rotary Board of Directors. We'll see you next week live. The Longwood Rotary Club Board of Directors of the things we do, think, and say. Number one.
Is it the truth?
Number two.
Is it the fair to all concerned?
Number three.
Will it build goodwill
and
better friendships?
Number four.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And here at Longwood Rotary Club, number five.
Is it fun?